Hello, everyone, and welcome to Collider Movie Talk. Hope you had a great weekend. On today's show, boy, what an episode. Netflix has a new horror movie. Stephen King might get another sequel, and we ask the question, will a beloved character die? Yes, we're talking about Meryl Streep and Mamma Mia 2. Joining us today, look at this incredible panel. Kristian Harloff's the guy waving.
That's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's not you, that's me, that's you, that's me.
Okay, we'll cut it there. Perri Nemiroff is also here. How are you, Perri?
Off to a great start. I'm really happy because we're talking about Dr. Sleep again.
Dr. Sleep, that would be the Stephen King sequel. However, Jon Schnepp, you're wearing a shirt that might indicate you're more excited about another sequel we're talking about today.
Absolutely not, Mark. I'm just really loving on ABBA.
You are a big ABBA fan?
I am.
Yeah. All right.
The death metal version of ABBA, specifically.
There's many incarnations of ABBA. There's only one Mamma Mia, and it is getting a sequel. Before we get to that, we do have the Stephen King sequel that everybody maybe kind of wants. That would be The Shining. That's right. The Shining is finally getting a long-awaited sequel, probably in no small part due to the fact that it was such a huge success. So now, Perri, you look at this sequel, Dr. Sleep. It is a novel, and it's going to be based on the Shining novel. So it's not going to be a sequel of the movie. It's going to be a sequel of the book that Stephen King wrote, because Stephen King historically was not a huge fan of what Stanley Kubrick did with his source material. So now we're going back to that. In this sequel, we see young Danny is now an adult, and he's going through some things, and he's rediscovering his ability to shine and connect with other people that can do the same thing. How are you feeling about this? Have you read the book?
I am about a quarter of the way through the book right now because Mark Riley insisted. I read The Shining because of him, and it was my first time reading The Shining, and now when I watch the movie, I kind of get what Stephen King means. I still think that the movie is a fantastic haunted house movie. The source material is completely different and a million times more character-driven than that movie is. So I don't think any of the reports that I read specified whether or not they're going to stick to exactly what's in the book or adapt the book but also consider what they changed for the film, because that can make a pretty big difference here. But with this book being a quarter of the way through, I am just freaking riveted. I can't stop reading this thing. It is so rich and interesting with how it explores what it means to have the Shining ability. And Mike Flanagan, what a smart move, especially after he's got a whole bunch of really solid films under his belt, but he just directed another Stephen King adaptation, Gerald's Game, and he did it 95% of the way really, really well.
95% of the way. I would say the same thing about Ouija, Origin of Evil, which he also directed. But Kristian, you look at this, and it's going off the novel as opposed to the movie. Isn't it smart to lean on the movie to some degree when you're advertising this movie because of how famous Jack Nicholson was as, you know, here's Johnny and all that stuff?
100%, but it's tricky because, you know, you want to get Stephen King on board. You want to have, you know, and the fact that Stephen King, like Perri says, even though you had the great Kubrick doing the first movie, you have someone like that, and it is a great movie all in itself, but he didn't like it. And now, because he loved it, he loved these other movies. But the thing is, I think it's tricky when you market it to the audience, because I have never read the novel. I didn't go back and read it like Perri did, so I can't, when I see the second movie, now I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, that all ties in. I'm going to go based off of what I know with Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. I'm going to go off of that. And if I'm confused, then like, that doesn't tie into the movie. That might hurt my experience. It might not. I might just say, yeah, who the hell cares? Because I don't think enough people are going to pay attention to the detail that, oh, no, this is the book, not the movie. Everyone who sees the movie, unless you're connected into this and the news, no one is going to pay attention and think, oh, it's connected to the book.
For what it's worth, I don't think it's going to be a matter of it being confusing if they stick closer to the source material and the original source material for the first book as well.
What was the difference in the first?
The biggest difference.
The lady in the bathtub wasn't so scary.
Oh.
The biggest difference for me was just the fact that in the book, Wendy and Danny feel like fully fleshed out real characters that I got to know a little before they went to the Overlook, and they feel like capable protagonists and heroes, whereas the large majority of the movie kind of just focuses on Jack Torrance's demise and him being basically turned by what's in the Overlook.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. How do you feel about the movie, Schnepp?
I'm happy with Flanagan as a director. I think there's a way for them to incorporate a few visual hooks that are burned into our mind from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and make it nothing like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I feel like Look, I mean, a lot of Stephen King adaptations. I didn't read The Shining, the book, but I read a ton of Stephen King books when I was a kid. The Stand, Pet Sematary, so many books. I mean, he's an incredible author. So if his story was completely thrown away, which in many cases it was for performance-driven reasons with Kubrick, and he just had a different angle. So they remade The Shining as a TV series, which I think I watched a few, maybe an hour, and I was like, no. But King likes that more than he likes the movie version. So I could see them staying far away from Stanley Kubrick's kind of vision. They're going to adapt the book, like you said. You're gonna see the book, but I think they'll probably maybe have the twins. They'll have that motif. I don't think you can wholesale rip off a filmmaker's vision. I don't see Flanagan doing those kind of tracking center shots.
Of course not.
Yeah. So, but I think you might flash back to a scene or something from that if they wanted to mine that kind of imagery.
But is the fear here that we're just taking another Stephen King novel because it was so successful? Do you think that's the risk you run, is that, anything that Stephen King did, particularly something that is attached to a famous property like The Shining, is that we're just doing this as a cash grab?
I mean, there's an element of that, but I also think that it's Stephen King, so there's also you're buying quality entertainment, you're buying quality source material, so it's not just a matter of buy it all up like Nicholas Sparks. Like Nicholas Sparks movie, one does good, and then like, let's make everything that he has.
Ghostlight.
Right, exactly. But no, this is Stephen King, so it's a sequel to a very popular book. It's a sequel to a very popular movie, so you would take the risk, I think, regardless if it did well. But the success of it certainly helps.
Yeah, Perri, do you think that it too is going to have an easier time than Dr. Sleep at the box office? Probably.
Yeah, I have a feeling it'll have an easier time just because it's going to come so soon after a hit original, and also a hit that wasn't just a hit by expectation standards, but just like blew everything away, every projection away. With this, though, obviously you think cash grab whenever you see, popular original, years later we're going to release a sequel, but we have the benefit of having great source material here, and they clearly scouted a very capable director. They want to make a good adaptation, and I feel like Flanagan wouldn't touch that book unless he thought he could do it justice.
This movie doesn't have a chance to do what it did. It doesn't have a chance. Because if it's a great movie, it doesn't have a chance, because the difference is it played to every audience. It didn't just play to the horror audience, and in its core, absolutely, it's a horror film, but it's a coming of age story. It had elements of Stand By Me. It had elements of it is a very different type of movie. This is not that. It could be great. It could be a great movie. It doesn't touch it. There's no way. Again, this is almost an eat a shoe bet here. There's no way. It'll do well, but there's no chance it even comes close to what it did. But it was a phenomenon.
If they, somehow mesh it into the Doctor Strange universe and make it's a shared universe.
Absolutely. Who in there?
Yeah,
it's called Dr. Sleep. That's my big question. Look, I think this premise sounds awesome. Usually, I'm a little cagey if it comes to, we had this family and this bad thing happened to the dad, so let's get to know everybody else in the family and see where their life is taking them. But this sounds really interesting, particularly if Danny is going back to Shining and he's helping people at a hospice, I think is where the book picks off, as far as them maybe making the transition to pass over, go to the other side. Then he meets a young girl who has similar powers, and those can have negative effects, as we saw some of which Danny experienced in the first Shining. Do I want him to run into a ghost bartender? Yes, of course I do. It's my favorite part of The Shining, because I'm in a lot of hotels, and if you come back to a hotel at 3 a.m., it's creepy, because you're thinking about The Shining, you're thinking about room 237. Yep. Is that right?
237 or 217, take your pick.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's two different ones. So I like this. But do you call, Schnepp, do you call this movie, when you're advertising on the poster, do you call it Dr. Sleep, or do you say The Shining 2?
Call it Dr. Sleep.
But I say keep this guy around, Mark. I would like to see this guy when he's before he goes to bed. That's what I want him to talk to.
It's a good point, though. What if it's called Dr. Sleep? I mean, again, even if it's great, that's going to hurt.
Nobody's going to know what that means. So don't you have to call it The Shining too?
No, Dr. Sleep is a good title.
It is.
You know what you put in front of it? Stephen King.
Yeah, but that doesn't always work. Stephen King's thinner.
Well, you could always put the sequel to The Shining in smaller text somewhere else, but it would be a shame to lose that title just because it's got meaning for this immediate story, but I also like a little bit of what it hints at from the past.
But remember, it did a great job with its teaser trailer. I mean, like when we all heard about it, remember when it was announced, it was like, we weren't like, it's going to be great. All of us on Cloudy Nightmares was like, boo.
And
how is it going to be scary?
Fukunaga left, and we're like, what's happening with this movie?
Yeah, there was a lot of confusion, and a lot of of people were unsure about it. That first teaser, we were like, wow, now we're excited. They did a great campaign. They could do the same thing with this.
There's also a lot of really interesting hooks in this book, too. Just like really quick, easy to convey ideas where all of a sudden you're going to be really interested in these characters, the new ones, too, and these abilities.
Schnepp, you hear about Dr. Sleep? You going to read the novel now?
No. I got way too many other things to do right now. So.
All right, Kristian, you read a lot of Star Wars. You think you ever pick up a horror novel?
I haven't even watched Stranger Things 2 yet.
Okay, well, maybe you should get on that. In the meantime, we're going to go to a sequel I'm pretty sure everybody is going to want to experience. That would be Indiana Jones Part 5. The Hollywood Reporter has now made it official, according to their sources. It will be Steven Spielberg's next project. There was some debate last week as to whether he was going to pick up West Side Story or Indiana Jones, but it is now set to be released by Lucasfilm and Disney with the date July 10th, 2020. Spielberg is also reportedly taking his time casting West Side Story in order to find the pitch-perfect actors for the musical movie. That still does not have a release date. They plan on shooting Indy 5 in 2019. Kristian, Harrison Ford's going to be 77 next year when he starts filming this movie. Is there any chance that he gets killed off and that we never get to see Indiana Jones again on screen?
I mean, there's a chance for sure. I mean, broken record as far as how I'd like to see the saga continue.
You want to see the young Indiana Jones
inside of the actual story, but I think that Indiana Jones could have. You got to make it a very different Indiana Jones movie. You can't try to make an Indiana Jones movie the same way you would in 1989 or in 1980. You just can't do it because it would look silly, and it started to look a little silly in the last movie. But if you now comb that around a little bit and made it, what would a 77-year-old Indiana Jones look like, and what would he be doing? He's not going to be jumping from cliff to cliff. He's going to be doing it a very different way. And again, I always throw back to what John Rambo did, because in John Rambo, he did one running scene, and the rest of it, he stood in a truck and just shot, because he's like, I'm old, I'm just shooting. And that's what you could pretty much do with Indiana Jones. What is he going to do at 77? I think this is a mulligan from the last movie. I do want to see it. I think that Spielberg gave us, and I like Temple of Doom, so I'm going to say 3 really good Indiana Jones movies. So he's got it. I think he's earned a chance to give us one more chapter to wrap it all up.
I mean, he did give us 3 pretty good movies there, Schnepp, and then The Last Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. My issue with that movie has nothing to do with Harrison Ford's age. So I think he could, I mean, look, he still seems pretty spry. He seems so, even though he's not running around a lot in The Force Awakens, he seemed very active and engaged. As long as Harrison Ford is invested in the character, then I think it's going to be fine, whatever stunts he may or may not be doing. Is there a chance that they kill him off?
I'm not even concerned about whether they kill him off. I'm just concerned about where's the story, what's the script. I mean, it's like, as they aged him up, he has to move forward. So if he's in his 70s now, they're probably going to do something based in the early 70s, and that's where the Indiana Jones movie is going to be based. So, time-wise, that's kind of exciting to see Spielberg go to the 70s, do an action adventure with 70s technology, 70s villains, 70s storylines, and I feel like they're going to introduce a brand new team. I keep saying this, but I feel like whether or not Indiana Jones gets killed or retires or whatever, it's going to be a new Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's Indiana Jones and the Raiders of whatever, because they have to introduce a team of Raiders. That's how I look at it. You cannot replace Indiana Jones ever. There's never going to be another Indiana Jones, but there could be his students who've trained under him, and that's the way to go. And that's the way Disney can get all those billions when they launch off of more. It just won't be called Indiana Jones anymore. So that's what I'd like to see happen.
So you're more on the page of we need to see him spawn somebody else, maybe not literally, but somebody who gets inspired by their professor and says, now I'm going to go after these artifacts in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s through present day, as opposed to Kristian, who's saying that he wants to see more Indiana Jones movies that take place with a young Indiana Jones.
I'm not saying one person, I'm saying a group. You're saying solo. I'm saying a group of people, not just one new Indiana Jones. I'm saying like a team.
Okay, Perri, do you like this team aspect going forward, that they were inspired by this myth, this legacy of their professor, or do you just want to see more young Indiana Jones movies?
I think I'm open to both ideas. I've been having a hard time with this because when that news first broke about this or West Side Story, I was more immediately drawn to West Side Story, probably because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull put a bad taste in my mouth and made me think, all right, I'm happy with those 3. Don't touch this ever again. But after that one turned out to be such a disappointment, I would be surprised if he made a point to jump into it this soon after and really commit to another story unless he had a really good idea. In terms of the character dying or not, I lean towards not killing him because it was already done with an iconic Harrison Ford character. And even though this is a completely different franchise and you should be able to wholly invest yourself and put your mind in that, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm still going to be connecting the dots. And I wouldn't want to take away from the death of one by having another death of another. So let's just let him kind of live happily ever after.
They should switch it up
until he
instead of being
away.
with Karen. What's it? I don't
Karen
forget.
Allen, yeah.
Yeah, with somebody with Karen Allen. Maybe something happened, it didn't work out. Now he's with Willie.
Yeah.
He's with Willie Scott, or maybe your girl Allison Duty. Well, yeah,
No,
I guess she
it
kind of
can't be Allison Duty.
Yeah, she kind of ate it there at the end. Here's my look. I might be getting way too in the mythology of this. Didn't he drink from the Holy Grail and be granted eternal life?
That was
what
only
does
inside.
That mean?
It was only inside of the structure. Yeah.
What?
Something like that.
That's how it works, man.
Yeah.
So you drink
You
from
gotta
the Grail
you
and
gotta
you get
stick around.
healed.
Yeah, you got to set up cable there, otherwise you're screwed.
You got to stay in the circle square.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cheat. I mean,
Yeah.
you
Who
know,
knows?
you get to live forever, but you
not
get to live
canon.
forever in those boring places where Uber Eats can't go. There's no there's no Whole Foods around the coast. There's literally nothing there other than a dude in a room with a bunch of cups that aren't the Grail.
I think that once they took the cup past when they tried to take it over,
Yeah.
null and void.
Well, I guess we're just going to have to watch Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade again. You think it's the right play for them to keep him alive then?
I mean, either way, just again, I think going back to what Schnepp said, it's all dependent on the story. It's how if they do it. I don't really necessarily agree with Perri that just because you killed off Han Solo, you can't kill off Indiana Jones. It
I'm
depends.
not saying you can't. It's just in my mind right now, still processing that.
Sure,
I'm
I mean,
not ready for that.
I
to
don't
happen
want
to
them to
another
just
one.
do it to do it. I want if it fits the story, and you're like, well, yeah, that's that. There's a particular movie that happened last year that a character that we all was beloved didn't make it through. That was a perfect send off to that character. I thought that worked really well. If that's the way that they do it this particular round, great. If they just do it because it's like, oh, we don't want to make any more movies, I want anyone else to do it, so he's dead, that would be stupid.
Why would you give away the ending of Geostorm like that?
Sorry.
We're going to move on to the box office report. Big weekend for Maze Runner. The Death Cure came in at #1. Dismantling Jumanji's reign at the top spot. Maze Runner the Death Cure, $23.5 million for the #1 gold medal. Jumanji was #2, 16.4. Hostels came in at an impressive $10.2 million. The Greatest Showman keeps on chugging, $9.5 million to its overall haul, and the Post rounds out the top 5 with a little over $8 million. Perri, Maze Runner the Death Cure surprised me that it did that well. I know that I think it's a 25% dip from the previous the Scorch Trials one did opening weekend, but for Maze Runner to hang on as well as it did, I think that's either a credit to the franchise being closed, or is it just we didn't have a lot of options this weekend?
I mean, I would have liked that number to be a little higher. I think I had predicted something like 20 million. So to see it wrap its opening weekend run with that amount, it just thrilled me. But it's, it's unfortunate when you have, let's say, a second movie in a franchise that isn't as good as the first one, and then they wind up improving things in the third, and that number is still going down, especially because I really do believe that of all the young adult book-to-film franchises out there, Maze Runner is one of the higher quality ones that I think a lot of people dismiss just because it came from young adult source material, which is a little unfortunate. But, with that number, I am hoping that means bigger things for Wes Ball to come, because you go see that movie, and one thing I would be hard-pressed for anybody to convince me that he is not a good director, because his work in that and what he brings out of that cast is just
That
exceptional.
opening scene was incredible. It
The
really was.
opening scene,
Yeah.
really every single action set piece, and I'm talking about everything from hand-to-hand combat, small-scale type stuff, and then also big things where he's got explosions and massive CGI things. Normally, that kind of stuff would look stupid on this budget,
He
but
made it interesting.
no, everything
Yeah,
looks
he did.
great.
The thing is, looking at this entire run here, 23.5 for that movie, considering the second one wasn't that good, and that a lot of these YA things have started to get a bad stigma around it. That's a good number. The story, though, is Jumanji. No matter what, even if it got knocked off, from a lot of reports coming out, it's going to pass Wonder Woman in the global. I mean, who in the hell thought that was coming?
Just
First of all,
past Spider-Man Homecoming.
that's crazy. I mean, good, and it deserves it. It's a really fun movie. I say it every single time. It's The Rock's biggest movie now, right? That's
Yeah.
Okay. Now that movie.
Well, the Fast and Furious movies are pretty big internationally.
right. I
but-
guess, but I mean, this is. But he was a supporting cast, but I still, I guess Fast and Furious.
I mean,
Bill's biggest
look,
hit.
this movie leaned on The Rock a little more heavily than the Fast and Furious ones did, but you can argue Fast 5 was reinvigorated in large part because of The Rock. So him lending his name plus a franchise is box office gold.
Well, and Hostel's doing 10.2, a movie that, you know, Westerns in general don't do that great, and it was limited release in December. It just kind of totally got brushed away. No one's talking about it Oscar-wise. Sometimes in January when a movie has Oscar buzz and there's some awards, you see the numbers spike for it, but that's not the case with Hostels. And I think that maybe word of mouth, and I'm glad at 10.2, it deserved to make that money. It's a smaller movie. I can't imagine how much it didn't make that, cost that much to make. So
yeah, Hostels doesn't have a reported budget right now. Schnepp, is that the standout of the weekend to you, the fact that it did as well as it did?
I'm really happy that to me is the one. I think it got snubbed by the Oscars. A lot of people talking about all these other movies that got snubbed. I feel like the Florida Project and then Hostels, and I finally saw Hostels like last week and blown away. And I don't know why it took me so long to see it, because it's such a fantastic film. Scott Cooper should have gotten a nomination as a director. Rosamund Pike should have gotten a nomination as Best Supporting
That's also
Actress.
Wes Studi in there too for Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah, I mean the acting in it was incredible. It's an on-point film. It is an emotional, gripping film from start to finish. It's tense. It's an incredible Western. I love Westerns. I love modern Westerns, because who would want to be alive in the Wild West? Nobody. I'm glad I'm right here with these microphones, and it's like, wow, what a horror show that was, and they really get into it there. So go see Hostels.
Okay, what if I put you in the Old West, but I give you the Holy Grail? Oh wait, it doesn't work unless you're in the Cave of the Crescent Moon. What a rip job. I don't like that at all. We're going to move to agree or disagree. This is part of the show where we'll set up a premise and it'll keep on spawning itself into a new argument. Whole lot of fun. I buy this segment. Our first one is The Ritual. It's a new movie coming out on Netflix, and the trailer just hit the web. It is directed by David Bruckner, the helmer behind the popular shorts in the horror anthologies VHS and Southbound. This is his feature film debut. It's a story of four old friends who reunite for a trip through the Scandinavian wilderness. That sounds safe. A wrong turn leads them into a dark and mysterious forest where an ancient evil stalks them at every turn. Netflix bought the film out of the Toronto International Film Festival last year, and one of the biggest buys of the festival, and now it's going to debut on Netflix February 9th. Jon Schnepp, The Ritual. Does this make you want to go camping?
I agree with camping. I'm never going to go camping. You know, I'm very happy to watch this trailer. At first, when it started, I had like a flashback. Is it going to be Blair Witchy? And I went with the trailer, and the trailer took me to different places where now I cannot wait to see this film, especially when they show, like, I don't know if it's going to be happening before they go on their hike or after, but some weird stuff going on in an office. Like, you're not only in the woods. And that's kind of those, like, are we just going to be in the woods the entire movie? And it feels like it's going to go a little bit beyond that, maybe a lot beyond that. So for me, I'm all in. It feels like it's got elements of The Descent. It's got elements to me that are some of my favorite moments of horror films.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think this movie takes place almost entirely in the Scandinavian forest. I thought it felt a lot like the Blair Witch Project. Not necessarily a bad thing if you're trying to sell a horror movie on Netflix. Kristian, do you agree or disagree that this is not the Blair Witch?
I disagree that it won't eventually be the Blair Witch as far as story goes, but I agree with you that it looks there's elements because it's in the woods and people are leaving creepy messages around all over the place. But what I will say is, whether or not everyone will disagree with me here, it and Conjuring is how you get me to want to go see horror films. This has nothing. I don't care.
How is this different?
How is this different?
Yeah, there's no creepy clowns.
No, this is like it's just
trees
like,
and sticks.
I've seen this movie a billion times. I've seen. You know, and again, for horror people, this is what you guys live for. Same reason you've seen action films like that, whether it's 12 Strong or not 12 Strong, but what's the other one that just came out with Gerard Butler?
Den of Thieves.
Den of Thieves. Yeah. Movies like that you've seen a million times, but I like movies like that, so I want to keep seeing movies like that. But it's not going to just rope you in if you're not a fan of action movies because you've seen it a billion times. This is a movie I have seen 1,000 times before, and maybe I'll be wrong because the other one was it The Witch? Mm-hmm. The Witch was a movie that I thought looked super generic, and it wasn't. It was crafted very differently. I felt like the ending was pretty generic, but the majority of the movie was good. So it could, because I'm going to have to see it anyway, but I wouldn't pay to see it. It and The Conjuring, if I wasn't doing this, I'd pay to see it. This, it's like, okay, whatever.
I got good news for you. It's going to be on Netflix. So
well, then I won't know. That is not good news, because then it's just like, you know what? Why don't you and Copster review that one?
Okay, Copster, you call up to the big leagues, buddy. Get ready to play. Yeah. Perri, do you agree with Kristian? This looks like just another retread of a scary camping movie. Do you think it's going to lend something original?
Okay, I disagree in that I do think it's going to go somewhere original, but I understand your reaction, and I had the same thought cross my mind, especially at the very beginning of the trailer before it gets into the really scary stuff, where I started to see some unique visuals that were kind of putting... I actually almost like the fact that it feels like Blair Witch at first, and then it kind of just distorts where I think it's going, and now I don't really know what to make of it, but... I liked what I saw here, and I think the atmosphere is so strong, and I was so unsettled by all that imagery by the end of it, and just knowing what David Bruckner is capable of gives me so much faith that this thing is going to be standout, different, or well worth your time to watch on Netflix, because his short segments in VHS, and even more so in Southbound, his segment in Southbound, I don't want to spoil anything, go seek that out if you haven't seen it, but really just blew my mind. It was one of the most inventive approaches to something that could have gone down familiar territory. And I saw that, 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, and I still think about that segment.
Yeah, and VHS is really cool too. I recommend if you're a horror fan, they're not all great, but a lot of them are really cool. I do disagree though. I mean, this looks exactly like, if it's not Blair Witch, it's maybe more like that movie. Was it either The Forest or The Woods?
No,
the one about the suicide forest? Because what I feel like from The Ritual is that this is going to be a movie where we don't even know if this stuff's actually happening or if these guys are just letting their fear overtake them. The Blair Witch, when I see the Blair Witch, I'm like, there's a witch in the woods. This is not like me going crazy. This is not me getting some sort of cabin fever. There is a witch that is scaring us. I don't know if there is that in The Ritual.
Well, but were you saying that when you saw the very first Blair Witch, where it was a rumor that they were investigating in the woods,
yeah,
and you didn't really know if it was real or not?
Yeah,
well, you're a lot smarter than a lot of other people out there.
Well, I grew up in those woods. Literally, I grew up in those woods.
Oh.
We're going to move on to another trailer. That is Mamma Mia 2. Get ready, everybody. Mamma Mia 2, it's back. It had a all-new ad last night during the Grammys, plus a new trailer a couple days ago. It's called Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Dropped during the Grammys last night, focusing more now on Cher's role in the new sequel. She joins the returning cast members Amanda Seyfried, Meryl Streep, Dominic Cooper, Pierce Brosnan, Stellan Skarsgård, and Colin Firth. The movie hits theaters this summer on July 20th. Jon Schnepp, you win the award for Mamma Mia 2 because, sorry, Kristian, Schnepp wore the ABBA shirt, so he gets to talk about it first.
That's right. You know, I know Kristian was really like chomping at the bit to get into this
upset.
Mamma Mia.
I just don't like horror movies.
he
I'm
was
not going to like this one either.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, when Cher started singing Fernando, my distaste for this movie, like, all of a sudden stopped for like a moment, and I was like, some kind of golden light started hitting me from my phone because I was watching it really tiny on my phone. I was like, Cher can almost do no wrong. I'm not going to see Mamma Mia, Papa Pia, whatever it's called. I'm not going to go see this movie. This is not. It feels right when it started. I was like, oh, it's a '90s film. It feels like it was made in 1992. It feels like a Love Boat ripoff. It's like some kind of made-for-television crap fest. It just looks so generic, but they've got so many good actors in it, so I feel like it's the Love Boat. They're like, hey, let's get these good actors and chuck them on an island, have them sing a bunch of songs, eat some good food, and then we'll somehow get some kind of weird songs together and get Cher in there to like make it really good. So Cher can't do any wrong, so that's the only reason I'm even say, like, if you like Cher, check out Mamma Mia. Forget it. Forget the rest.
Okay, Perri, you agree with Schnepp. Is this movie all on Cher's shoulders as to whether it swims or sinks?
No, I disagree with that. Because you said it. This has a great ensemble. And even though I don't think this movie is necessarily for me, I did enjoy the first Mamma Mia. I understand why it made as much money as it did. It's a happy, feel-good story. Years later, was I dying for another Mamma Mia? Not at all. Did this trailer change my opinion and make me excited to see it? Nope. But I understand why so many people out there are eager to see something like this. And when you look at some of the newcomers, Lily James has a pretty good track record right now. Why would she take this if it was just a big steaming piece of garbage? But I will agree with you that it does look a little made for TV.
People love to go to Fantasy Island and be in the Love Boat.
The first one did have that same kind of look too, but
Yeah.
I am excited to see her
Just
play a young Meryl
busload
Streep.
full of seniors pulling up in front of an AMC and oh, it's a Mamma Mia. That's great. I want films for super old people to see. I'm already old, and I'm like talking like super old people. I'm like,
Now,
yo.
let me give you a question here. Let me just curious. What do you think, if you were to guess, the first Mamma Mia movie made domestically, the first one? Just take a wild guess.
Wild guess domestically,
Yeah.
120 million.
Close. 144,000 domestically. It
Million.
Million, excuse me. That's all it made. 144,000. It's made 144,000 and still got a sequel. That's the power of Meryl Streep and Cher. No, 144 million with a worldwide total of 609 million. So
Makes sense. Makes sense.
it makes sense why they're doing it. You're not the target audience. The
not
same
at
way
all.
I'm not the
He
target
looks like
audience for
he's
that
dressed
last.
like the target audience.
Well, no, but that's the thing. It makes total sense why they would do this.
Yeah.
Plus the fact if you're going to make a bigger sequel to a movie that made $610 million, you get Cher.
Yes.
And then you also get, if you already had Amanda Seyfried in this role, who is another up and coming talent, Lily James. This movie makes sense. It totally makes sense why they would do it. It's not like, oh, why are they making Mamma Mia 2? You know, again, almost $610 million is why they made Mamma Mia 2.
So that's why you make it again. But Perri and I were talking about this at our pre-production meeting. I don't understand what's happening in the movie. I really don't. Like, she's having a kid with Dominic Cooper. So we know who the father is. There's that's what the fun of the first movie was, is which one of these three famous people was the father to Amanda Seyfried. We found out, everybody sang a lot, and we had a great movie. This one, she's having a kid, and she's like, oh, I need to go revisit my past to figure out how my mom was able to do this. How was anybody able to? You're having a kid. I don't want kids, but it's like, if you want kids, it's not that uncommon. Read Dr. Spock. Why does she have to go back and like think about her mom's past and where she came from in order to have a baby?
Well, I don't have a good answer to that because all the hypothetical answers we came up with were.
I want you to say on camera what you came up with.
They were just wrong. I don't know which one you're talking about, but like now my mind is going. So young Meryl Streep, played by Lily James, gets with this guy who then she finds out is engaged. So who is the father in the end of that thing anyway?
Spoiler alert! It was Pierce Brosnan.
It was
the guy who
Pierce
sang like
Brosnan.
David Bowie, kind of. Really bad.
So could. She needs to learn a lesson, maybe, from mom's experience having her as a kid, which doesn't really line up because she supposedly has a loving husband now.
Yeah,
so
I don't know.
I can't really make sense of it.
How are you putting? I mean, we're gonna go back in the past a lot. So Perri, I'll let the cat out of the bag. I'll let the Dewey out of the bag here. Is that Perri thinks that Meryl Streep's dead in this one? Boom, she's done so. She's going. She's eating, and that's why you bring in Cher. Schnepp, is Meryl Streep dead in Mamma Mia 2?
Just like Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Cher can't die. Meryl Streep can't die. Well, Cher looks like Lady Gaga in this trailer. She looks like she's doing a Gaga impersonation. I don't know, man. Like, you know, like I said, this is demographically like so far outside of my wheelhouse. It's like I didn't see the first Mamma Mia. Spoiler, you know, like anybody would think I saw it.
You didn't?
Nope.
All right. I thought you were on that bus.
Nope.
Pulled up in front of the AMC.
No.
I guess not. So you don't care if Meryl Streep dies in this movie or not?
Zero care. I don't want Meryl Streep to die, but this movie doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I want all the old people and people who love this movie, the first Mamma Mia, flock out and see this movie. 800 million. Let's
Okay, it opens July 20. Then it's going to be counter-programmed to a lot of the big blockbusters that are coming out this summer. Kristian, is it going to make $144,000 at the box office?
144,000, most likely, yes, it will. Just from the Cher will buy $144,000 worth of tickets.
John Roca and his friends are all going to go see this movie.
He's already seen it.
Probably
Advanced
over and
screening.
over.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
Yeah, Roca and his 70
well, Roca's the target demographic. Roca's 87 years
He's
old.
humming Mamma Mia
Yeah.
right now, and the other room
Right.
is a Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia.
Roca's
He's
the
really
only
excited.
person older than Indiana Jones. But we are, as far as
Poor outlaw, man.
as far as Mamma Mia goes, no, we'll not make $144 million this run, but it'll do pretty well.
All right, it's coming out against Alita, Battle Angel, Skyscraper is the week before, Hotel Transylvania
July.
3 is the week before, Ant-Man and the Wasp is 2 weeks before, and then Friday, July 27th, the week after Mamma Mia opens, is Mission
Because
Impossible
it was August
6.
last time.
It was not August.
not
It
August?
opened against the whenever the Dark Knight came out.
Oh.
I remember it opened.
July.
It opened against the Dark Knight and your favorite movie, Space Chimps. Because I remember we saw the
No, I
Dark
remember that
Knight,
too.
and then I went to my brother's wedding, and then you picked me up from the airport, and on our way home
Saw
we
Space
stopped and
Chimps,
saw Mamma Mia, and it was so weird us buying a ticket to Mamma Mia when we knew the Dark Knight was right there. in
This
the theater
10 years
next to
ago?
it.
Mamma
to it,
Mia
yeah.
opened in 2008 against The Dark Knight in July.
You know what's crazy?
Mid-July.
And
Then
Space
I
Chimps.
might. Then you know what? I might rethink.
You're right.
Just to say no right away because that shows you the difference in audience when they don't care and they go, Yeah. Put it up against Batman.
Yeah.
Who cares? That's not who we're going for.
No.
No one who saw Mamma Mia, the $144 million, was like, well, what should I see first?
Right.
They're taking Mamma Mia first.
And I think they're like, hurry up and get it done already.
Right.
This is 10 years. These
Right.
people are on their deathbed. They got to see Mamma Mia too.
Well, that was also its total. And Mamma Mia, because of, I guess, good word of mouth, held on really, really strong. Like, when you look at its week-to-week drops, they were so minimal. So given the fact that July this year, right around the time the movie's coming out, yeah, there's a lot of big-name competition that we're all aware of, but there's nothing directly in competition with the audience that this movie is targeting. So I really wouldn't be surprised if it managed to at least match the first one's $27 million opening, and then depending on whether it's good or not, maybe it could go on to
this
match
could be
it
an
for the domestic
amazing
total.
family film.
Who
you know?
knows?
Right.
I like the moxie. I want them to save Mamma Mia 2 until Christmas 2019. I want you opening against Star Wars and Jumanji, taking down the Titans. Mamma Mia 2. It's in theaters this summer. We have some really fun stuff on Collider Video right now, including but not limited to Heroes. It's going to be up later today, hosted by that young man right over there, Jon Schnepp. What's on tap? More Mamma Mia talk?
All Mamma Mia is a share special. We're like going to talk about like what are they doing in Mamma Mia 2? What did they do in the previous Mamma Mia? We're going to get into the musical history of Mamma Mia as well as the greatest horseman alive. Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus will be involved. We're going to talk about P.T. Barnum. It's going to be fantastic. Tune into Heroes. None of that stuff is going to be on there. We're going to talk about the Valiant Universe takeover, a whole bunch of other sweaty news. If you're into that kind of stuff, tune in.
Kids, that is how you do a promo. You tell everybody what is not going to be on your show, and then you end it with the real stuff that is actually going to be there. And I'm sure you had a ball looking at Collider.com's recent article about their set visit from Black Panther. So there's a whole lot of tasty nuggets, and we'll be doing a whole lot of Black Panther coverage leading up to the release later on in February. We're going to be doing an all Q&A episode of Collider Movie Talk later this week. It's going to drop on Thursday, so we want your questions. You guys determine what we talk about on that show. So go ahead and start tweeting us anytime at Collider Video. Use the hashtag Collider Movie Talk. You can tweet at me, tweet at Riley if you want to make it a little easier for us to find. We're also going to save some time at the end of this show for a live Twitter question or two. And last but not least, the Movie Trivia Schmodown Awards for 2017. We gave out the best and the worst and everything in between for the season that was. That is now up on Collider Video. It dropped on Friday. Thank you guys for all your kind words regarding that idiot host. We're going to move on to Mailbag. Jan J is our mailbagger today with recent news of Cloverfield 3 being shopped to Netflix and Mudbound's recent successes at the Oscars. There's been a bit of talk about films that deserve to be seen in theaters. My question is this: what does that mean? What is it about a film that makes it worthy of a theatrical experience? On the flip side, why should some films be seen at home on Netflix or Hulu? Does it depend on the scope of the project, the subject matter? What do y'all think? I believe that all films should be seen in theaters. Keep up the great work. Well, John, I know Christopher Nolan will agree with you that most films should be seen in theaters. It costs money, and Netflix, you pay your subscription, you can watch unlimited stuff, that and Hulu and Amazon, so there's room for everything. Personally, for me as a consumer, I want to go see the big blockbusters in a theater because I want that surround sound, I want the huge screen, I want to see these images, these effects all come to life. I think it just looks better on a big screen, whereas if you have a smaller movie, even these Oscar movies that we get screeners for, I don't mind seeing a lot of them at home because that's not what I go to the theater to experience. It's not a discredit of those movies. A lot of them are better than the blockbusters from a story or acting standpoint, but I get excited for the blockbusters because I love shoving popcorn in my face. Christian, how do you decide what's a theater view and what's a home view?
Very differently than what you used to do 2-3 years ago. We are in a very different time now. We're just the streaming is starting to change the shape of how we view movies. And movies like Mudbound, you put a movie like Mudbound 5 years ago, it doesn't get the kind of recognition that it does. It comes and it might go in a theater. It might do fairly well for the limited amount of theaters it comes in. You're not in limited theaters. You're in every household that has Netflix now. That is a way for them to build it. Plus, Netflix has nice budgets for these people to do it, and they don't also value success the same way you do inside of theaters. It's different. Like, they're not like, okay, so many people have to see it. They're paying a certain amount of money for on Netflix to produce this thing. It gets this kind of recognition. The same, what was the Idris Elba movie? The
Beast of No Nation.
Beast of No Nation. Who also same thing. There are certain movies they take a lot of risks, and a lot of them don't do very well. But it's still in the very early stages. I think Scorsese, when you look back of what happened with Silence, that movie was a great film. No one saw it. Now, if that movie came out on Netflix or Amazon, it does a lot better. I think it gets more recognition. So there are certain movies, smaller movies, that now have a better shot of being seen. So that's the answer why. As far as, yeah, sure, in a romantic romantic vision. You want every movie to be seen in the theater because that's how you think of movies. But it's not that way anymore. And as far as your surround sound and everything, there are so many surround sounds and better screens. But I know what you mean as far as blockbuster goes. Yeah, you still want to see all the Marvel and the DC movies and the fantasy movies and the Star Wars movies. You want to see them in the big screen. That's why the blockbusters still do really well, because it's an experience. Smaller movies are now going to start to really flourish because of streaming.
It's a hard thing to actually embrace, because my mind, when I hear that question, immediately goes to, well, if a filmmaker intended for their movie to be seen on the big screen with a full theater of moviegoers, that they should have the ability to make that happen. But when you look at it that way, the realistic thing we have to consider right now is movie tickets are insanely pricey, and that movie that they spent however many years making could wind up being seen by more people if it's on a streaming platform. And that's the positive side of this, is that there's going to be more filmmakers being able to take risks on project, having creative freedom, getting to spend maybe a little more money with a Netflix budget, and then they're going to have their product get seen by more people that way, which is very exciting to me. The negative side of this, though, I think, is we just did cover that story with the Cloverfield 3 thing, and in one of the articles I read, there was a quote from the guy who took over Paramount. His name is escaping me, and it was something along the lines of they were looking at what is theatrical and what is not in this day and age. And when you think about one of the biggest studios out there, one of the studios that has the ability, or at least had the ability, to get more stuff in theaters on the big screen, when you have someone thinking about the industry in that way and just paring it down to one sentence, that's a very scary reality to me. I know it's a reality and I know it's going to happen no matter what, but if someone who's in charge of a big studio like that looks at a Cloverfield movie and says, well, that's not even worthy of the big screen treatment, then I'm scared for Paramount with what they're going to decide is and isn't worth it.
What did the last movie do? What's it called?
10 Cloverfield Lane. Here's
How
the
did it
thing:
do?
the
did
movie
well.
did very well, but it only cost $10 million to make.
Sure.
So with Cloverfield in particular, it's already spent $40 million to get that movie made. And apparently, J.J. Abrams, I think when he looked at it, he wanted to go in and retool it a lot. Which, when J.J. Abrams wants to retool something, might cost a lot more money. So instead of having to do that and making that another picture on J.J. Abrams' deal for Paramount, instead you save J.J. Abrams to make another movie for Paramount, and you can just dump this thing on Netflix. But Schnepp, in the grand scheme of things, is that the way you see this going, where people only gravitate to theaters to see the giant, like, comic book blockbustery movies, and then they stay at home for everything else?
Well, I certainly hope not. I mean, it seems like that's eventually what's going to happen over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, however it plays out as the theater experience changes and transforms due to budget and, the expenses. But I'll use two examples. Mute, which is Duncan Jones' brand new film. That's kind of an indirect follow-up to Moon, which received a theatrical release, which I saw in the theater. It's a fantastic film. It's a tiny budgeted film with one actor in it. It's a very small film. It's a fantastic movie. It did really well later on Blu-ray, DVD, home video. So it made a sequel, Mute. It's a movie he wanted to make first. It's not getting a theatrical release. In fact, it just got a teaser release last week for a trailer that's coming out this week for a release at the end of the month. That's how they're going to do. It's a smart move too, from Netflix's point of view. But as far as for filmmakers and people who want to see their films and made something to be seen cinematically, the big difference is this. I'll say this: I saw Florida Project as a screener first. I saw it at my home. I've got a big screen TV. I've got a great environment to see movies. It's big enough. It's a big screen, great audio, so I don't feel like I'm missing out when I see these screeners. Then I saw it again a few weeks later. Willem Dafoe happened to be in town. It was an event. I went to go see it in the theater. It's a transformative experience. When you see films in the theater, you're encompassed by them. It doesn't matter what the budget is. If it costs $100 million, or if it costs $10. The whole idea of going to see a film is to become part of this become part of this experience for like 90 minutes or 2 hours. That's what going to the movies are. And you experience that with a bunch of other people. That's the kind of communal experience of going to theaters. Seeing a movie in your home is a completely different experience. Now, everyone is used to seeing films now, and we live in this different world now where you have Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. So it's going to change, and it is changing, and that's how larger studios are looking at it. So I don't think it's a bad thing, or I just think it's like you got to weigh it out. Like if a filmmaker is making something for it to be seen in the theater, you got to try your best effort to try to get it into the theater.
I mean, personally, I prefer to see every movie in a theater if I could. You know, if I could see every movie, and Kristian brought up Silence. It's a great example of a movie that is not a blockbuster, but I am really happy I saw that movie in the theater because sometimes when you put on a slower movie at home, you can get distracted. You're looking at your phone because nobody's there to police it. You get them to go to the bathroom. You're making yourself a sandwich, and you're just not as locked in. I love being locked into a movie. It's just that if I have the choice between seeing Silence or seeing a huge blockbuster in a theater, you know, I weigh in story a little bit, but I'm probably usually going to go with like a King Kong or a Godzilla in a theater over Silence.
All valid points. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I also saw Silence in the theater, and I'm glad that I did, and I wish that I could see every movie in the theater, but it's also you switch to the business side of things. Does not make sense when you have this other medium, then because everything you say about phones and distracting and pausing it, you don't get the same experiences. You're locked into the theater. You're in there for Silence 3 hours, and you're watching it, and you can't do anything else. That's part of the thing that comes with home viewing. But it's like there is just, for the way that it makes sense on a business model, it makes more sense to make a profit and recognition and more eyes on your product if you say, you know what, let's give Scorsese a crap ton amount. He can get De Niro. He can get Pesci. He can do what he wants to do, and he can put it out. You don't have to worry about a time constraint on the movie because the studio's worried about runtime and blending into other movies. There's so much that you can do, and there's so many rules that don't do the same thing that they do in the theater. It makes sense.
Marty made a 9-hour movie called The Irishman.
But he can, though.
But
that's the thing is that he can there. Now, whether or not we want to sit there and watch for 9 hours, that's one thing. But you can do that now because there's not these constraints.
If it's Pesci, if it's 89 Goodfellas Pesci, I'll watch it all day. I don't care what the movie's about. I will watch it all day. McClown, I amuse you. We have one Twitter question, then we'll call it a day. This comes from Terry McGinnis. Says, Phase 4 of the MCU does not have a sequel for Doctor Strange scheduled as of yet, but films that were released like Homecoming and Guardians 2 already have scheduled sequels. Those movies were released after Doctor Strange. So, Schnepp, I'll kick this one off with you. Why haven't we heard about a Doctor Strange sequel yet?
It's probably because he's already in Avengers, both Avengers films, and he'll be part of Phase 4 is my guess, either in a new team up or his own solo film. That'll be announced. It was a big hit. Everyone responded really well to Doctor Strange, more so than they probably even thought. So I couldn't possibly see them not doing a sequel, at least one sequel to Doctor Strange, but he'll be coming back in all the other Marvel films.
Yeah, and I think you have to acknowledge that Marvel has a scheduled rollout of when not only do they want to put their movies out, but also make their announcements as far as their sequels. I think it's a pretty assumed thing at this point that Doctor Strange is going to have a sequel, just based on the success, the critical acclaim of the first one, and that's going to take us further into the MCU and its next phases. Kristian, is Doctor Strange one of the sequels that you're more excited about in the MCU?
Yeah, not as much. I mean, I definitely, I'm curious to see it. And the first time I saw the movie, thought it was good. I liked it a lot more the second time I saw it. I really did. But I think that it's, out of all the other movies that are coming out right now, it's not the one I was like, oh, when is Doctor Strange 2? I'd be excited for it, and as we get closer to it, but no.
I put you to theater right now, and you got Guardians 3, and you have Doctor Strange 2. Which one are you going to see?
Doctor Strange 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Guardians 2 have such a sour taste in your mouth.
I just think that it's just a comedy show now. It's just it's lost its way as far as what it is, and I know some people enjoyed it too. But it was just like,
how many times did you see Guardians 2?
Twice, and it's just the joke. Everything was for the joke.
I would say it's on Netflix now. Just watch it again.
I can't do it,
really?
man. It's just,
I really enjoyed it more than even the theatrical experience.
It lost control of what it was supposed to be. It's just like everything. The first one was so good. Like it blended everything together, and this was just like you knew everyone was setting up for a joke. Not just one character. Every character was setting up for a joke, and it became a night at the Improv.
Perri, I'm going to give you the same option at the multiplex, but is Doctor Strange one of the sequels that you would be more excited about?
Absolutely. I'm going to do my very best not to. We've had that conversation so many times.
You really like Guardians?
I do. I didn't like Guardians 2 as much as I liked the first Guardians, but I still think it did a great job with balancing that humor with heart and action, and it had some pretty significant storylines for some of those main characters.
Strange did? Oh, you're sorry.
How do you feel about Power Rangers, huh?
I don't mind Power Rangers.
Jurassic Park is like the best movie ever, isn't it?
Oh, you're spoiling something?
Perri, throwing haymakers.
No, I'm not spoiling anything.
Oh, okay.
I just know that you don't look at that one as highly as I do.
All right.
But with Doctor Strange, okay, here you go. I'll throw you this one. Yeah. I had the same response to Doctor Strange where I really did like it the first time I saw it, and the more I watched it, the more I started to love it. And things that I maybe didn't grasp. It's, you know, like the whole Dormammu thing is something that I thought it was silly the first time. And then all of a sudden I started to see how they were paving the way to something like that. And I got it and I started to appreciate it. And it left me in a place where I was really excited for a Doctor Strange sequel. And I don't think that they're not going to do it because they haven't announced it. There's no doubt in my mind that someone at Marvel is in very early development trying to think of a great story for that character. But they have so much on their plate right now. It does make sense for them to see how the movies that they've made and the movies that they're further into development on, see how those play out before they actually announce something, because we all know what happens when you announce something too early and then you take it away and it puts a bad taste in everyone's mouth before the movie even comes out.
Well, I think Doctor Strange 2 will make use of how a lot of the other Marvel films, their second and third films, were able to introduce other Marvel characters into, like, so Doctor Strange will probably have like a team up or Avengers vibe to it. It'll still be Doctor Strange's film, but we'll get to see some of the more mystical characters that are in the MCU. So I would like to see that. I would never put it against another film. Like, I'm going to see all of them.
Okay,
So
piggybacking off that real quick, Sean B. also tweets us and he says, when are we going to see the first teaser for Captain Marvel? Could it be in July?
You'll see it before you see
Comic-Con?
Solo trailer.
Oh, you baby. You think you're going to see it this week? Okay, this is Super Bowl
I'm
week.
done. I'm done guessing. I don't care anymore. It's so. Dude, it's like.
This is like seeing Hagar in his last fight.
But
He's done.
what are we doing here? The movie comes out in May.
Oh,
what are we doing?
Say it ain't so.
I'm just saying, what are we doing? Let's release it.
Solo.
And because it's not a matter of it not. It's the strategy. It's the strategy behind it. It's not that they don't have it ready. It's ready. I know people that have seen certain things from it. It's ready. Release it.
Listen,
it's the strategy.
You're so
is
excited
dumb.
about it. When it drops, you're gonna probably be a fetal position.
I'll be excited
crying.
to
It'll
see
be
it.
so good.
I want to see it, but
But that's what I mean. It's elevated the excitement. It's 4 or 5 months away.
But we all know that. I mean, again, the majority of the movie going public has no idea this movie's coming out. No one knows there's a Han Solo movie coming
But
out.
I think that's probably good, especially because it's a Star Wars solo film. Solo, literally. That it's like, hey, what, this trailer? Yeah, you get to see it in like 3.5 months. I think it'll keep that excitement for the entire time.
I think they probably want as much separation from just the debate of The Last Jedi as possible.
Yes.
And I also think they should have released it by now, though.
Yeah.
You know?
I say they release it May 13th.
Just seeing Kristian just a week before the movie
Yeah.
comes out. Where have you gone, Kristian Harloff? Our
Sorry.
nation turns its lonely eyes to you. So as far as the Captain Marvel trailer goes, I think you're probably going to see it at Comic-Con, if not before. Marvel loves having a big presence at Comic-Con, especially in a year when there is no D23, or as you would say, X54. There's none of that this year, so you could have Captain Marvel. The movie comes out in March of 2019, so that makes sense to land a teaser trailer for Captain Marvel. We've seen that unofficial first image, so one would surmise we could have a teaser ready by this summer.
I would think that Comic-Con would be the great place to debut something
Or Avengers
like that.
Infinity War comes out before that.
Well, that's the other thing that crossed my mind. And I think that's, you know, we've heard a lot of rumors with will she appear, won't she appear? They say she's not going to appear. You never really know, especially when you can tack on an end credit thing. So I don't know. Maybe they'll reassess and they'll find a strategic place to drop that first teaser trailer, if it has any kind of connection to something we'll see in or after Infinity War.
Schnepp, that's how you feel about it? You think Infinity War, or do you think Comic-Con?
Well, I mean, WonderCon comes before Avengers Infinity War, so I think any kind of stuff that Marvel might release will be at WonderCon. That's coming up, like, I think in April, March or April, end of April, March, something like that. But, yeah, I think they would drop something at San Diego Comic-Con. They've been doing these giant presentations, and I'm sure they'll continue doing that. And we'll probably see Phase 4, whatever it's going to be, announced at this coming San Diego Comic-Con. And with that announcement will be all these other, like, you know, like, oh, and by the way, here's Brie Larson. Some kind of, like, remember we saw Thor Ragnarok. We saw all that stuff, like, you know, it's almost a year ago now. So it feels like a year ago. And it's like, so much of that footage is still not released. So it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, that's what they do at San Diego Comic-Con. We're going to see, like, you know, some scenes or a trailer, a special trailer cut together for Captain Marvel.
Yeah, and then we'll probably have your boy Benedict Cumberbatch up there too, announcing the Doctor Strange sequel. And then Channing Tatum will take the selfie of everybody, just like he did 2 years ago. That's going to do it for us here at Collider Movie Talk. I want to thank everybody behind the scenes, as well as the panel up here for me, and a special thank you to everybody that came to see me do stand-up at the Ice House and Comedy Store this weekend. Great seeing all of you Collider fans and your smiling faces. See you guys out there on the road really soon. Until tomorrow, I'm Mark Ellis, signing off. Here's more me. Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.